Week 1 is in the books, and now we're on to Week 2, and we're starting off with an SEC matchup between South Carolina and Kentucky as they continue their rivalry series. Hello everybody, you're listening to the College Sports Superfan, and Week 1 was a lot of fun. I think Week 2 is going to potentially be even better. Let's start with South Carolina. Unfortunately, there isn't a whole lot of positives to go into with the Gamecocks. They only beat Old Dominion 23-19. It was really just the defense that carried them, as the defense set them up with multiple turnovers. They won the turnover battle 4-1, yet they still only won by 4 points. That's not very good. If South Carolina had played anybody even halfway decent, or even if they didn't force any turnovers against Old Dominion, they would have lost this game. And I'm just going to be blunt about it. South Carolina looked like the worst SEC team in the league this past weekend, especially since Vanderbilt was able to win their game against Virginia Tech. In Florida, they played a super tough opponent in Miami. So really, South Carolina, yes, they won, unlike some of the other SEC teams this weekend, but they, without a doubt, to me, looked like the worst team in the league. The quarterback, freshman Lenoris Sellers, was not passing the ball well at all against his first career start. He's a true freshman, young guy, has a lot of hype, but, wasn't one of, the most highly recruited quarterbacks. So that was to be expected, but still, 43.5% completion percentage just isn't going to cut it in the SEC when you're playing like that against Old Dominion. For only 114 yards, he had no passing touchdowns. Fortunately, he didn't throw an interception, so he didn't make any super costly mistakes. It just seemed like he wasn't really seeing the field very well. He was able to run somewhat effectively at 68 yards and a rushing touchdown, but again, that was against Old Dominion. I don't think he's going to be able to do that well against some of these other SEC teams. Rocket Sanders, he was the one positive for their offense. He comes in from Arkansas after a up and down career with the Razorbacks. He had 88 yards and a touchdown, but he had 24 carries to get to that. So his average was only 3.7, which isn't a bad average by any stretch. That's pretty decent. But you consider the fact they had to get a lot of carries just to get that yardage is a little concerning. And the other running back, Juju McDowell, did not do very much either. But again, the strong point for South Carolina was the defense. It forced 4 turnovers, 2 interceptions, 2 forced fumbles. They had 5 sacks and 8 total tackles for a loss. So maybe South Carolina's defense might be pretty good this year. The offense just going to be a serious struggle. Meanwhile, for Kentucky, I was very impressed with the Wildcats. They beat University of Southern Mississippi 31-0, which doesn't sound like that bad of a beatdown when you look at what some of the other SEC teams did this past weekend. But there was really bad weather in Lexington, and they had to end the game early. They ended the game with just over 9 minutes to go in the third quarter. So think about that. 31-0. There was still almost an entire second half left. I think it's reasonable to assume that even if Kentucky started putting the backups in, they were going to score a lot more than just the 31 points. So I look at 31-0 there, and I think that's really a lot more than that could have been. Brock Vandagriff, who's been hyped up for a long time. He originally came from Athens, Georgia. He went to Oklahoma, then he transferred to Georgia. Neither place was going to start him, and finally he's waited his turn. He transferred to Kentucky. It was a massive, massive transfer for the Wildcats. They brought him in, and they brought in Rutgers quarterback Gavin Wimsatt. Both were highly touted quarterbacks. Vandagriff beat him out, and he looks like a legitimate superstar for Kentucky. He had 169 yards passing with 3 passing touchdowns and 1 interception. And I watched him play, and he just looked very comfortable in the pocket. Really good pocket awareness. He was able to roll out and hit guys on the run going out of bounds. I was very impressed with his arm strength and his pocket awareness. And I look at his receivers, and Barryon Brown, his yardage wasn't super high, but he's a versatile guy that can be used all over the field. He had 2 touchdowns Dane Key is a veteran receiver that I think is going to do really well. Jamori Macklin comes in from University of North Texas. He looked pretty good. And then they have a veteran tight end in Jordan Dingle. This, I think, is a really good passing attack. And at running back, they actually had a surprise. Demi Sumu Arngbe, I'm hoping I'm saying that name right. He's a senior. He's waited his turn. He ended up being great, 59 yards and a touchdown. So clearly their strength is the pass. They've got a couple solid running backs, even Chip Trainum coming in from Ohio State as well. You look at this matchup against South Carolina, the Gamecocks actually lead the all-time series over Kentucky 20-14 with just one tie. And last year, South Carolina won at home 17-14, and the Gamecocks have won the last two matchups. But I gotta tell you, I don't see any way Kentucky loses this game. They're favored by 10 points. I think they're actually going to win by even more than that. I got Kentucky beating South Carolina by at least 14 points. My record right now is only 4-6 thanks to Florida State. I'm telling you guys right now, I'm not going to pick Florida State the rest of the season. Let me just say that I've been burned twice by them, so I'm not doing that. I feel pretty good about my 5 predictions for this week. This is the first one. I got 4 more left to go. I got Kentucky winning by 14. I think this is going to be an epic week 2. Thank you guys so much for listening to the College Sports Superfan, and stay tuned because I got more predictions coming up throughout the week.